Wendy Michelle was just 30 years old when her life was brutally cut short in the summer of 1990. That July, a farmer in rural Illinois stumbled upon the body of an unknown young woman in his soybean field. For over 3 decades, she remained known only as the Madison County Jane Doe, until a recent forensic breakthrough finally gave her back her name. While the perpetrator of this horrific act on Wendy still walks free, the authorities are now one step closer to bringing him to justice. Wendy, who was born Winona Michelle in 1959, led a life as dynamic as it was unpredictable. She was described by those who knew her as a loving, fun person with a kind heart and a great love for animals. By age 23, she was married and had 2 children, demonstrating a nurturing side even as she maintained an adventurous spirit. Wendy's life took her across the country. She was born in Los Angeles, raised in Tennessee from toddlerhood, and spent her teen years in Vero Beach in Florida. In the mid-1980s, she moved to Northern California, but she never stayed put for long. Always restless and eager to travel, Wendy was known to hitch rides with long-haul truck drivers during her journeys. In April 1990, she and her kids took a bus trip back to Nashville, Tennessee, where she left her children in the care of family before venturing out on her own. By May 1990, Wendy was spotted during a brief visit with relatives in the Washington, D.C. area. Notably, she was in the company of an unknown man who worked as a truck driver. This would be the last time her family ever saw her. Wendy's penchant for travel meant it wasn't unusual for her loved ones to lose track of her whereabouts for stretches of time. But as months passed with no word, her family grew concerned, and sadly, they would not learn of her true fate for 35 long years. On July 20th, 1990, the mystery woman's body, not yet known to be Wendy, was discovered in that soybean field outside the small city of Troy, Illinois. The location was a patch of farmland near a rural road intersection, a quiet place that became the scene of a horrific crime. Investigators noted that the victim was found without clothing, except for a pair of white sandals on her feet and a silver ring with a turquoise heart on her finger. Some of her clothing, including a pink Florida t-shirt and undergarments, were found tossed along a path leading toward the body. It appeared the perpetrator had scattered her belongings, perhaps in an attempt to destroy evidence or stage the scene. The young woman had been savagely attacked in a way that shocked investigators. Several of her internal organs were missing. Her reproductive organs had been apparently removed, a disturbing detail that underscored the perpetrator's disturbed intent. Strangely, forensic examiners found no defensive wounds on the victim's body. This suggested that she might have been overpowered very quickly, or even slain elsewhere, and then hauled to the site and dumped in that field, potentially supporting the staging theory. The condition of the remains indicated she had likely been deceased for at least several days, but perhaps even as much as a week, before the farmer came across the body. Notably, the length of the post-mortem interval, the period between when the individual perished and when they were found, may play a role in whether this case gets solved. But I'll get into that shortly. For now, back to 1990. The Madison County Sheriff's Office launched an intensive investigation, pouring hundreds of hours into chasing down leads. They had the unenviable task of trying to identify a victim with no name and no obvious connection to the area. Detectives circulated forensic sketches of the woman's face and carefully preserved the evidence found with the body. The case was entered into national databases for missing and unidentified persons, hoping to match the Jane Doe to someone reported missing, but no match turned up. Despite their efforts, the trail went cold, and as months turned into years, and then decades, the Madison County Doe case remained unsolved. The victim's identity a stubborn mystery. She was laid to rest in a local cemetery under a headstone that gave no name, only an epitaph for a Jane Doe who had been cruelly taken before her time. For nearly 35 years, Wendy's family had no idea what became of her. They feared the worst after so long with no contact, but they had no closure and always held on to hope that she was somewhere out there alive. Meanwhile, her case file sat gathering dust until late 2024, when advances in forensic science offered new hope. Investigators decided to take a fresh look at the cold case using modern DNA technology. The Madison County Sheriff's Office teamed up with the Illinois State Police Crime Lab and Othram to re-examine physical evidence from the 1990 crime scene. Othram's scientists applied cutting-edge forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile from the tiny, degraded samples. From there, they turned to forensic genetic genealogy, a method that involves comparing the unknown DNA profile to genealogical databases to find familial matches. By early 2025, this DNA sleuthing paid off, and Othram's team discovered genetic matches that led them to potential relatives of the unidentified victim. Detectives tracked down these family members and obtained reference DNA swabs from them, which confirmed the relationship. The identification was officially announced on July 1st, 2025, bringing a mix of sorrow and relief to Wendy's surviving family. Wendy's brother came out and released a statement on behalf of the family, saying that they were devastated. That said, they expressed gratitude for the hard work by all the investigators in locating their missing family member. With Wendy's identity uncovered, the focus has now shifted to catching the perpetrator. The nature of the crime has led to some chilling theories. One major theory is that Wendy fell victim to a serial predator who stalked women along Midwestern highways. Wendy's habit of hitchhiking with truck drivers in 1990 put her in contact with many strangers on the road. It's possible that the unknown man she was last seen with, the truck driver in D.C., could have been involved in her death, or perhaps she met another assailant as she traveled west. Long-haul trucking routes have infamously been corridors for serial offenders targeting vulnerable women. Another compelling lead links Wendy's case to an earlier unsolved mystery in the same region. In 1986, 4 years before Wendy's death, a 27-year-old woman named Leah Chavez was found slain in a cornfield near Lebanon, Illinois, just one county over. The similarities are striking. Like Wendy, Leah was found in a similar condition, with evidence that the perpetrator had attempted to surgically remove her reproductive organs. Both women had no defensive wounds, suggesting a surprise attack or some other form of incapacitation. The eerie congruence in the violence done to Wendy and Leah Chavez has led some to suspect the same perpetrator may have been responsible for both. Notably, Leah also lived a similar free-spirited drifter-type lifestyle, much like Wendy. In fact, authorities and criminologists have pointed to Larry Hall as a possible suspect. Hall is a convicted kidnapper and a suspected serial perpetrator with 2 confirmed victims, and potentially dozens more. He was active in the Midwest during the 1980s and early 1990s. While Hall has never been charged with Wendy's slaying, investigators are actively considering his involvement. Notably, it's unclear if male DNA evidence was found at the scene, but if it was, it's likely that Larry Hall wasn't the perpetrator. Since he's currently incarcerated for his crimes, and given the severe nature of what he's been convicted for, his DNA profile would have been cross-referenced in a database. That said, it's always possible that the DNA evidence was too degraded, and that Othram's scientists are currently working on that piece of the puzzle as well. Others have theorized that the perpetrator may have been someone much closer to her, who used her drifter lifestyle as cover to eliminate her far from home. Under this theory, the disturbing acts committed to her body may have been an attempt to make this look like a copycat-type incident. That said, This theory is highly speculative, and it's unknown whether Wendy had any individuals in her life who wished to do her harm. "You can't even begin to imagine what I've been through," Marilyn Bergeron told her close friend in late 2007, eyes filled with tears and fear. Just weeks later, on a cold Sunday morning in February 2008, the 24-year-old Canadian woman walked out of her parents' home and was never seen again. Her haunting last words and inexplicable disappearance have perplexed investigators and loved ones for over 17 years. How could a young woman simply vanish in broad daylight, leaving behind only cryptic clues and unanswered questions? This is the mystery of what exactly happened to Marilyn Bergeron, the disturbing twists and turns along the way, and why she actually may still be alive. Marilyn Bergeron was born on December 21, 1983, in Chicoutimi, Quebec, in Canada, and grew up with a passion for music and adventure. By her teens, she was singing, playing instruments, and even trying to start bands in school. Friends and family recall Marilyn as vibrant and open-minded. She loved exploring different cultures and languages, becoming fluent in both French and English, and acquiring a basic proficiency in Spanish and Russian. Also, for those unaware, Quebec is the part of Canada where people generally only speak French in day-to-day life. After college, Marilyn set out to pursue her dreams in the big city of Montreal. In 2005, at age 21, she moved to Montreal, where she landed a job at a major music store and did freelance sound editing for TV shows. Ever ambitious, she also started training in finance and talked of becoming a flight attendant and moving to Western Canada one day. Despite her talents and bright plans, Marilyn's life in Montreal wasn't all smooth sailing. She lived in the Hochelaga Maisonneuve district, a neighborhood known for poverty, drugs, and crime, and she began hanging out with a bit of a rough crowd. According to those who know her, Marilyn took up a you-only-live-once 80s rock star type of lifestyle. By late 2007, Marilyn's loved ones noticed a drastic change in her. The once upbeat young woman had grown withdrawn, fearful, and sad, as if burdened by a secret trauma. Something had happened to Marilyn in Montreal. Something so terrifying that she abruptly decided she could no longer stay there. In early February 2008, Marilyn phoned her mother in tears and begged to come home to Quebec City, saying she didn't feel safe living alone in Montreal anymore. She cryptically promised to tell her mom why when she got back, but refused to give details at that time. On February 10, 2008, Marilyn packed a bag and fled Montreal, catching a bus back to her parents' house in Quebec City that very day. Over the next week at home, Marilyn's behavior alarmed her family. She was jumpy, distraught, and would often break down crying without explanation. Her mother gently pressed Marilyn to reveal what had shaken her so badly in Montreal. She went along all the usual lines of questioning, trying to figure out if she had substance abuse problems, debt issues, or boyfriend troubles. But Marilyn insisted she didn't. Finally, her mom asked the unthinkable. Had her daughter been assaulted in some way? At that, Marilyn fell silent, her face twisting in pain as tears flowed, an answer in itself, and her mother suggested that she talk to a psychologist. Despite her inner turmoil, Marilyn tried to regain some normalcy that week. She quit her Montreal job, retrieved her remaining belongings with her parents' help, and attempted to move on. By Saturday, February 16, 2008, she had officially moved back in with her family, seemingly ready to start fresh in her hometown. However, sadly, Marilyn never got that fresh start, and the very next morning, she would vanish without a trace. Sunday, February 17, 2008, began like an ordinary winter morning in Quebec City. but it would become infamous as the day Marilyn Bergeron disappeared. At around 10 that morning, Marilyn came downstairs dressed to go out. She wore gray velvet pants, tall black suede boots, and a long black overcoat with faux fur trim on the hood. Her parents were surprised when Marilyn said that she was heading out for a walk. Marilyn had been home for just one day, and with everything that had been going on, they expected her to chill out a bit. Her mom asked if she could join her daughter on the walk, but Marilyn insisted on going alone. Before leaving, Marilyn made a point of taking along a credit card her father had given her for emergencies. Interestingly, though, she left behind all her other ID and personal documents. With a quick promise to be back that afternoon, Marilyn walked out the door into the chilly February air, leaving her worried mother on the doorstep, wondering what was happening. Hours passed with no sign of Marilyn, and unbeknownst to her family, Marilyn's short walk turned into a mysterious odyssey across the city that day. She appeared all over Quebec City on surveillance video throughout the day, appearing visibly nervous throughout. She was noted to be continuously looking over her shoulder, as if she thought she was being followed. She also attempted to withdraw money from an ATM, but entered her PIN incorrectly a number of times. At 4 p.m., nearly 5 hours after the ATM sighting, Marilyn popped up over 10 miles away. She entered a coffee shop in the Saint-Romuald area of Lévis, a town just across the river from Quebec City, and bought herself a coffee with a credit card. The transaction timestamp and a barista's memory confirmed Marilyn was indeed there, alone, looking depressed and in a hurry to leave. This brief cafe visit is the last confirmed sighting of Marilyn Bergeron. After that, she vanished. Marilyn did not return home that evening, and she has never been seen or heard from since, and her credit card was never used again either. The distance between Marilyn's house and that coffee shop is significant, roughly 15 miles, including a bridge across the wide frozen river. It would have been an arduous trek on foot in the middle of a notoriously cold Canadian winter, and Marilyn wasn't dressed for a long hike through snow. Her family strongly believes she didn't walk there herself. They suspect someone gave her a ride, or that she hitched a lift with a stranger. Notably, some believe that she may have been looking back at a vehicle while she was doing that ATM transaction, though this hasn't been confirmed. Marilyn's parents reported her missing to the police that night, and surprisingly, the investigation kicked into gear quickly. I'm so used to having to say that nothing was done for the first 2 or 3 days, but thankfully, this wasn't the case here, which is why so much evidence could be preserved. Despite exhaustive efforts in 2008, no meaningful leads surfaced immediately. The winter snow eventually melted, seasons changed, and still the Bergeron family had no answers. In fact, nearly 2 years passed in silence before a potential break in the case finally emerged. In January 2010, veteran crime reporter Claude Poirier received an unusual phone call from a man in Hawkesbury, Ontario. This is a small, predominantly French-speaking town right on the border of Quebec and Ontario. This caller claimed he recognized Marilyn Bergeron. He said he had seen her frequently over the past year in Hawkesbury, always accompanied by the same young man. According to this tipster, Marilyn appeared to be living in the area, moving around town from place to place with that man. Others in Hawkesbury backed up his story. Some regulars at a local restaurant believed they had also spotted Marilyn dining there with a man after being shown her photograph. Some of these reports painted an unsettling picture. Marilyn looked under pressure and almost captive during these sightings. The Hawkesbury sightings in 2009 to 2010, if true, suggested that Marilyn might have remained alive for at least a year after vanishing and had traveled far from Quebec City. It also raised the chilling possibility that she was being held against her will across provincial lines. Her family took this information seriously and urged police to investigate the Ontario leads. Quebec City Police did check out the tips, even collaborating with Ontario authorities, but frustratingly, nothing conclusive came of it. Law enforcement remained as baffled as ever, and officially Marilyn's status stayed missing. The authorities maintained that there was still no proof of any crime having occurred, nor proof that Marilyn was alive or dead. By 2016, nearly a decade had gone by, and the Bergeron family's frustration was palpable. They decided to take bold action. They hired Marc Bellemare, a former Quebec Minister of Justice, as their lawyer to advocate for Marilyn's case. His involvement brought renewed media attention, and he held 2 press conferences in 2017. The first press conference announced a confidential tip line that anyone could call with information. The second conference announced that tips did indeed flood in, and revealed that 43 new sightings of Marilyn had been reported in the months since the family's outreach. While many of these could not be verified, they reinforced one crucial point. People across Quebec and Ontario thought they saw Marilyn, keeping hope alive that she might still be out there. It was at this time that a key witness, Marilyn's old college friend Jonathan Gauthier, finally shared a startling story that shed light on her secret trauma. Gauthier's account took everyone back to that fateful night in December 2007 when he met Marilyn in Montreal, only weeks before she vanished. Reconnecting after months apart, he was shocked at Marilyn's depressed state when he arrived at her apartment. She was sitting in the dark, listening to melancholy music. They went to a party together, and there Marilyn ran into another friend. Something about that encounter triggered Marilyn's anxiety. She became agitated and asked Gauthier to take her home immediately. Back at her place, Marilyn broke down sobbing uncontrollably. Gauthier spent hours trying to console her and find out what was wrong. Gauthier recalled Marilyn saying he couldn't even imagine what she'd been through, and that she wouldn't tell him because she didn't want to put him in danger. This chilling conversation was the last time he ever saw his friend. Hearing it retold in 2017, Marilyn's family and the public now understood just how petrified she had been of whatever happened in Montreal. Despite new information and the family's tireless advocacy, the mystery still lingered, and this new witness reinforced what Marilyn had said to her own parents. Then, in October 2022, nearly 15 years after Marilyn disappeared, another dramatic twist emerged. At a press conference held in Hawkesbury, Marc Bellemare and Marilyn's parents introduced a key witness named Guy Salico, who had come forward with an eerie story. Salico recounted that on one cold, rainy night in December 2009, a young woman had knocked on his door in Hawkesbury at about 2 or 3. The woman was shivering, soaked from the rain, and dressed in just a light jacket, a white t-shirt, jeans, and high heels. Clearly not attire for the winter weather. She was crying and asked if she could use the phone to call someone in town. Salico and his partner brought the distressed visitor inside, gave her a towel to dry off, and let her make a phone call. The call didn't seem to go through to anyone. When they offered to drive her wherever she needed, the young woman refused a ride, saying the address was close by. She stayed about 10 to 15 minutes, apologizing for disturbing them, then headed back out into the dark, rainy night on foot. At the time, Salico didn't recognize the girl at his door. Only a few months later, when he saw a news segment about Marilyn Bergeron's disappearance, did it click. He believed it was Marilyn herself who had stood in his doorway that night. The woman had been blonde, whereas Marilyn was naturally brunette. But Marilyn's family confirmed she sometimes dyed her hair blonde. Salico reported this incident to the Quebec City Police back in 2010, but it was kept confidential and never made public until the 2022 press conference. Notably, the fact that this was kept confidential is one of the factors that leads some people to believe that Marilyn is indeed still alive, but I'll get to that shortly. Hearing Salico's story, Marilyn's mother became convinced that the desperate woman was indeed her daughter. If that is true, it means Marilyn was alive and on the move nearly 2 years after she disappeared, and perhaps trying to reach out for help. Following Salico's revelations, the Bergeron family stated they had gathered other new information that leads them to believe Marilyn may still be alive. Notably, both they and the investigators have decided not to make this information publicly available. However, they believe that she is possibly living somewhere in Ontario under a different identity. They made a heartfelt plea through the media. If Marilyn is out there and wishes to remain hidden, they'll stop searching and respect her wish. They just need to know she's safe. Given the amount of twists and turns in this case, it should come as no surprise that there are a number of theories of what happened to Marilyn. From early on, Quebec City police considered the possibility that Marilyn might have done it herself. Their reasoning stemmed from her evident emotional distress and the fact that she left home abruptly without identification. Marilyn's family has publicly stated in the past that they strongly believe she met with foul play. One scenario is that a random predator, possibly a stranger, took advantage of her vulnerable state. Perhaps she accepted a ride from a kindly appearing motorist that afternoon, only for that person to have sinister intentions. Another possibility is that Marilyn fell victim to a trafficking ring or criminal organization. Montreal's criminal underworld is known to exploit young women, and Marilyn's fear in Montreal could imply she stumbled into some sort of trafficking ring. The Hawkesbury sightings of her with an unknown man who kept her under close watch lend some credence to the idea that she was being held prisoner or controlled. If so, it's chilling to imagine, but not implausible. She might have been trafficked or forced into an abusive situation far from home. Another angle is that the threat to Marilyn was personal. Perhaps an individual she knew and feared in Montreal followed her or arranged to meet her in Quebec City. Marilyn's comment that revealing her secret could put her friend in danger hints that a very dangerous person was involved. Some believe that this could be a controlling stalker ex-boyfriend, and that any unrelated male figure in her life would necessarily be put in danger due to this stalker. Based on Marilyn's parents' latest statements, some believe the most likely scenario now is that she actually intentionally ran away to start a new life. Some missing persons deliberately vanished to escape problems. There have been numerous unconfirmed sightings of her over the years, which suggests she might indeed be living incognito somewhere, likely in Ontario. Perhaps Marilyn felt so unsafe due to whatever happened in Montreal that she decided to completely erase her identity and live under the radar. She might have dyed her hair, changed her name, and cut off all contact to protect herself and her family. In this scenario, the man seen with her in Ontario might have even been helping her hide rather than holding her captive. This could have explained why he seemed hypervigilant while she seemed to be nervous and scared. And just to drive it home, it's notable that at the 2022 conference, Marilyn's mother said, "If Marilyn has a new life, they'll respect that." Notably, the family also chose not to publicly release a number of facts that may prove she is alive and well and living in Ontario. This suggests that there may be very real information that she's out there, and given the high-profile nature of her case, journalists may descend upon Marilyn if she's alive. As for what this evidence could be, it's possible that they've hired private investigators to conduct social media investigations. These investigations could reveal a person who's potentially Marilyn posted on the internet, perhaps on someone else's social media account. Further, some have speculated that the reason that the official investigation appears to have trailed off is that Marilyn was found alive by investigators. If the cops find an adult missing person who has vanished voluntarily, it's not their job to return that person to their parents, or even directly tell them or the public what happened. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just checking in on everyone, so let me know what you're up to these days. Also, I realized today that I haven't done a live stream since February, and I'm thinking of doing one again relatively soon. If you missed out on them back in the day, it's basically just me talking with everyone in chat while I have some of my content playing in the background. Anyway, let me know in the comments if there's any interest. Also, there's some links in the description, so check them out if you want to help out my channels even more. In the early hours of July 5th, 2000, a quiet factory in Seabrook, New Hampshire became the scene of a baffling mystery. A security guard's car was found ablaze in the parking lot, and the guard's booth stood abandoned, a pack of cigarettes and an untouched lunch still on the desk. The guard, 40-year-old Curtis Pichon, had vanished without a trace. Curtis was a former police officer and Army veteran who had devoted his life to public service until a devastating medical diagnosis changed his path. His disappearance that summer night remains unsolved, leaving behind haunting clues and agonizing questions. Curtis had always dreamed of a career in law enforcement and worked towards it his whole life. He achieved that dream in the 1980s, serving about 10 years as a Concord, New Hampshire police officer. Unfortunately, in his mid-30s, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a progressive illness that ultimately forced him to retire from the force in 1994. Losing the job he loved was a crushing blow. Curtis became withdrawn, battled depression, and for a time drank heavily as he struggled to find a new purpose. By 1998, he was trying to turn his life around. He found work as a night security guard at the Venture Corporation Auto Parts Factory in Seabrook. It wasn't his dream job, but a role where his police experience was useful and the physical demands were manageable despite his condition. By July 2000, Curtis had been at this security job for over a year, and he was known by his colleagues as a reliable, quiet worker who did everything by the book. He still grappled with pain from his MS, but he was determined to keep working and carve out a stable life. Curtis reported for the overnight shift on July 4th, 2000, expecting an uneventful night. Only a skeleton crew of employees was on duty due to the holiday. In the early morning hours of July 5th, chaos erupted. Curtis's green Mercury Topaz, parked just outside his guard shack, inexplicably caught fire sometime around 1:30. Flames engulfed the car, lighting up the darkness. Curtis quickly called the Seabrook Fire Department, and firefighters arrived to extinguish the blaze, but they could find no obvious cause for the fire. Oddly, colleagues later noted that Curtis didn't seem very upset about losing his car and the many personal belongings he kept inside it. Once the fire was out and the firefighters left, the factory fell quiet again, and everyone likely agreed they had all had enough adventure for one night. Around 3:30 that morning, a supervisor came by the security booth to check on Curtis and found the booth empty. Curtis was nowhere to be found, and in the guard shack, his personal items were left behind. His smog logs, lighter, and uneaten lunch were sitting as if he'd intended to return at any moment. Outside, the shell of his charred car still smoldered in the night, within plain view of his guard booth. At nearly the same time, a witness saw two vehicles speeding away from the factory's parking lot. An immediate search of the building and grounds found no trace of Curtis. It was as if he had stepped away from his post and vanished into thin air within minutes. The eerie circumstances, a mysterious fire, a missing guard, and cars fleeing into the night marked the beginning of a perplexing case. When word spread of Curtis's disappearance, initial theories swirled. Given his personal struggles, some wondered if he had staged his own disappearance, or perhaps taken matters into his own hands. His family and the cops knew he had been depressed, so either of these options seemed conceivable at first. He had even recently acquired a weapon of some type, which raised concern that he might be planning something. However, no evidence had turned up, and crucially, a short time later, Curtis's family found that very weapon tucked away in his apartment, still wrapped and in its original packaging. This discovery indicated he had not acted on any dark plan that night. Another possibility was that Curtis wandered off into the night, disoriented or distraught after the car fire. But this theory quickly fell apart, since due to his multiple sclerosis, Curtis had great difficulty walking and couldn't have gotten far on foot. He also left behind items he would never have willingly abandoned. His glasses, wallet, and even his ever-present pack of smokes were still in the guard booth. As a heavy smoker, he wouldn't go anywhere without his cigarettes. Everyone who knew him was completely adamant about this. He wasn't just a heavy smoker. He was known for chain smoking on the job and at home, and while he was driving. There weren't too many places where he wouldn't light up, so this fact just didn't make a lick of sense to the cops. Investigators confirmed that after that night, there was no activity on any of Curtis's bank accounts or credit cards. It was as if his life simply stopped on July 5th, 2000. These facts made it clear that Curtis almost certainly didn't leave voluntarily either. Instead, attention turned to disturbing clues suggesting foul play. Evidence soon emerged that a crime might have occurred at the factory that night. Investigators discovered that someone had used a forklift to pry open vending and change machines in the plant's cafeteria, presumably to steal money. The timing was suspicious. The car fire may have been set as a diversion to draw the security guard away, while the break-in took place elsewhere in the building. If Curtis stumbled upon these intruders, it could have cost him his life. For Curtis's family, this theory was disturbingly plausible. Notably, Curtis had even told his brother he suspected illegal activities, like drug deals, were happening during his shifts, and he feared something bad might happen at work. The witness report of 2 cars speeding away reinforced the idea that multiple accomplices fled the scene after Curtis vanished, likely taking him along. With only a handful of people working at the plant that night, police scrutiny turned toward those on duty. One name soon stood out: Robert April, a co-worker who had been present when Curtis disappeared. In 2008, April allegedly told someone that he was responsible for the missing person from Seabrook, and then later even allegedly boasted that he had buried the body. This was, of course, an obvious reference to Curtis, if this hearsay is to be believed. And I really do need to stress that this is something some guy claims he overheard some other guy saying. Police later searched April's property, even digging up a suspicious concrete-filled pool, but found no trace of Curtis. April refused to cooperate with investigators, and although authorities have officially stated that they suspect he was involved, the lack of evidence has prevented any arrests. To this day, the case remains officially unsolved, with April being the lead suspect. The other individuals, if there were any others involved, as is suggested by the multiple vehicles, remain unknown. Notably, the cops haven't hinted at a motive as to why they believe April was involved in this crime. Curtis's family had him legally declared dead in 2008, but they have never stopped searching for answers. More than 25 years later, the disappearance of Curtis Pichon remains a haunting mystery. His family is absolutely certain he met with foul play, and they know he would never have willingly stayed away so long.